What's happening YouTube? Today is an exciting day. I've got my Indian Scout Bubba in my garage. Check this beauty out. Woo! One of the things I wanted to do was to change the stock exhaust, because really it just really sounds like a sewing machine, you know. It just there's no presence on the road, and it's almost when you're doing high speed, you know, you're safer when you're heard, when your presence is felt, or that's at least what I believe. So the stock exhaust just isn't cutting it for me. So I've got the Freedom Performance exhaust for Bubba that I will be attempting at installing today. And I thought, hey, why not cover that with a video? Because I'm sure there are other folks out there who are wondering if this can be done in your garage. So let's jump into it. A few call outs though. I have recently moved into our new pad, so the whole garage is a bit of a mess right now. So please excuse the mess around the motorbike. I'm still in the process of setting this garage up, but honestly, I didn't want to wait to change the exhaust until that was done. So I'm gonna jump into that straight up. Let's go. So the things that I did use, there was 13, 14, 10 mm ratchet spanner. I used an extension to get to some of the tricky spots. I used 24, 10, 10 mm, 8 mm, and 13 mm sockets. And in the video, I'll show you where I used what. So 24, 13, 10, and 8. Tools I wish I had flexible head spanners, because while putting the heads on here, it was quite tricky to do it without the flexible head ones. I wish I had those, would have made my life a lot easier. But other than that, these are the tools you need for the job. Now, before we actually installed the new exhaust, I wanted to record the current exhaust and what that sounds like. So I'm gonna give that a go. Let's start this up. So the first bolt you need to take off is the support bracket behind the stock exhaust. You will need a 13 mm spanner for that. It is in a bit of an awkward spot, and that is the case with most of the bolts today, so just be careful, take your time. Once that one's off, we'll be taking off the 13 mm nut at the front between both the mufflers and the pipe. You will need a 13 mm socket for this one. Makes your life a lot easier. This one is pretty straightforward. It was easy to take off. Once that's done, right at the end of the both mufflers, you have another 13 mm bolt that you need to take off. Again, that was pretty easy to take off. And once that is done, you come back again forward. There are two clips holding the mufflers to the pipes. You loosen both the clips, and then the mufflers should come off fairly easy. I have seen some videos where it was quite tricky to take them off, so just make sure you take your time, so wiggle them out slowly, or use a mallet, rubber mallet, to just gently hit it. So the stock pipes are off. And I'm so tempted to just rev it a bit to see what it sounds like straight pipe. Mufflers are off, so let's just do one thing. I've turned the bike on, I've turned the ignition on. I want to start it up and see what it sounds like. Let's go. Jesus, that was very loud. That was so loud. Surprised how much these mufflers actually muffle the sound. I mean, it's in the name, they are mufflers, but sheesh, pretty excited to put on the Freedom exhaust, see what that sounds like. But you know what, let's continue without heating the pipes too much. Once you're done with that, the next part is a holding clip that's holding the exhaust pipe sections together. It is a 10mm bolt, 10mm nut. You just undo that. Once done with that, it is time to take the oxygen sensors off. There are two sensors, one on the pipe that connects to the left header and one that connects to the right. It is a 10mm nut, but please be careful while unscrewing this. The actual cable rotates with the nut as you are undoing it, so just be gentle and careful while you take this off. You don't want to damage the actual cable undoing this sensor, so need to be slightly careful here. After the oxygen sensor, I decided to take off the radiator guard and the radiator support assembly to get more space to work on the headers. To get the actual radiator support assembly off, you first need to take the radiator cover off. There are two of them, one on either side. Once the cover is off, next step is to take off the brake peg and the gear peg, foot pegs. To do that, you will need an 8mm Allen wrench. There are two bolts, one visible, one inside of the actual foot peg assembly. So just make sure you take that one out as well. It is the same on both sides. Once you have the foot peg off, you will see a small black bolt, and that is the bolt that's holding up the radiator support bracket. Undo that with a 10mm socket. Move on to the other side. Repeat the steps. Two Allen bolts, 8mm Allen wrench is what you need. Once both of them are off, you will need to take off the bolt that supports the radiator bracket. These ones are easy to do, nothing tricky here, just standard stuff. Once you take that off, you can move the radiator a bit forward to work on the header bolts. Here you are going to need a 13mm flexible spanner. I didn't have that, so I had to be careful and do the whole thing very slowly and gently, making sure I wasn't hitting anything I didn't want to. But it would be a lot easier if you had a flexible head spanner here for this job. So there are two 13mm bolts on both the headers, so 2 bolts each. Then we move on to the other header. This proved to be a lot trickier than the front one. There wasn't enough space. I had to be very careful. So this is where a flexible head spanner would have come in a lot more handier. Also, just while undoing it, as I undid the bolts and the nuts, I actually dropped one of the nuts down, and it sort of rolled down into the side where the actual belt assembly is. So I had to take off the cover on the belt and gear assembly to get to the nut. So when you're undoing this, one tip I have is to be careful not to drop your nuts down. They will roll into places you don't want them to roll into, and it just adds you know, annoying delay. I was able to do the top nut here from this side, but to actually do the bottom nut, I had to go to the other side of the motorbike to get access to the nut again, purely because I didn't have flexible head spanner. But I believe even with a flexible head, it would have been a lot easier if I went to the other side from the beginning. It was just, yeah, a lot easier to do it from the other side. Now, getting the pipes was a bit tricky. I had to be careful. So what I recommend is to take the back section off completely and then take the front section off. You'll have to move it around a bit, wiggle it slightly. Alright, so I looked up the instructions on the Freedom website. What I'm going to do now is install the headers first and then tackle the rest. The first step here was to install the oxygen sensor onto the new exhaust. Because the wires are attached to the sensor, I pre-twisted the wire in the opposite direction and then sort of screwed it back onto the header to avoid it getting a lot of turns, if that makes sense. And then I realized I had to take the OEM support bracket off, so I kind of got to that first. You'll need a 24mm socket to do the big bolt, and then the 8mm Allen key to do the rest of the ones. It's pretty heavy, so you don't. So yeah, I took it off. I didn't want the extra weight on the bike. Put the nut back on, tightened it up again with the 24mm socket, then back onto the exhaust. I put on the left header first and left both the nuts loose. And again, you know, one of the nuts I was able to do from this side, the top one. For the bottom one, I had to go to the other side of the bike. Make sure you leave the nuts a bit loose at the beginning, because you will need to wiggle different pieces around to make sure everything fits together with each other. One tip I have for you here for installation of the left hand side header here is that the bottom bolt is quite tricky to sort of get to the spot, to the right spot to install the bottom bolt. So what made it easier for me at least was to go to the other side, take this sensor connector out here. So this connector was here, take it out of the way, and then go in from the bottom here to attach the bolt. That just helped a little bit there. Also, while trying to put the nut here in this header, it just kept kind of falling down, and then it just dropped into the belt assembly here. So I had to take this cover off to get to the bolt again. Just as an FYI, may happen to you, may not happen to you. It did happen to me, so I thought I'll include it. Next was to install the support bracket. You get a spacer with a bracket that you need to pop in at the time of installation. So yeah, just pop the spacer between the bracket and then tighten it all up. This step is pretty straightforward, nothing crazy here. You just need the 8mm Allen wrench again to tighten this up. Once you're done with that, your exhaust will sit on this bracket and will be tightened so it stays with the body. I used a pipe to sort of tighten things up a bit. Just kind of helps a bit of leverage there. Once that was done, I attached the front oxygen sensor. Again, same thing here. I pre-twisted the oxygen sensor cable, as you can see here. So as I tightened it, it went back to its original position. Made things a bit easier. Tightened it up, and then it was time to adjust the exhaust into position. I know I'm in the view here, I apologize for this, but this part was slightly tricky, so I had to sort of move around a bit. Completely forgot that the camera was recording, but basically you have to wiggle the part a little bit to not only put it into the right side header, but also to make sure it actually fits into the left header pipe as well. Now that your headers are all secured and your exhaust is in place, next step is to tighten this here to join and secure the header pipe to the exhaust, and also bolt in the exhaust to the body using the bracket that was provided. This clamp is now tightened, exhaust is secure, O2 sensors are connected, headers are connected. I'm going to put on the actual covers that sort of go on top of this pipe. I think they're called heat guards or something like that, but yeah, I don't know official terminology, but basically these just go on top here. I think they're called heat guards. But yeah, I've got two pieces to connect. Once that's done, I'm gonna pop the radiator back on, the brake and the gear support brackets on, and that's about it. Then we're gonna take it out for a spin. During this step, the installation instruction instructs you to put tape on your actual exhaust to avoid any scratches from trying to put the clamp over it. I didn't care, honestly, because these were going to cover the exhaust anyway. But if you'd like to avoid scratches on your exhaust pipe, pop some tape on so as you put the clamps onto your exhaust pipe, it doesn't scratch the powder coating off. Again, I didn't care about that. Once the shield is on, you just gotta tighten it up. It is an 8mm bolt on there. Tighten it all up. There are two pieces in total, so I've got first one going up here, and then I've got second one going up here. Again, same story, pop some tape on if you want to avoid scratches, otherwise, yeah, just go for it. Now the exhaust come with these spacers because your brake pedal here, now with the exhaust installed, the exhaust is in the way and it kind of hits it. So you get to these spacers that you can use to extend your brake pedal and bring it a bit further out. So all you gotta do is just use one of these spacers, pop them between your pedal and your body like so, and then now I'm gonna stop the video here for a second because this was a point where I made a mistake. You can see here with this arrow there is a bolt missing. Before you install your brake lever and your gear lever support assembly, you have to install the radiator support assembly first. And that's why you see that hole there. That's where the bolt for the radiator support assembly goes. So make sure you install that first. I forgot about it. I installed the brake and the gear lever assembly. And then when I went to actually put the radiator back on, I realized, crap, I had to install the, the support assembly first. So this bolt and the similar bolt on the other side hold the radiator using this support bracket. I forgot to put the support bracket in when I was putting the brake and the gear lever assembly in. So I had to take both of them off, put the support bracket back in. So here's your reminder, don't forget to put that in. Now let's continue to put the radiator cover back on. once your pedals are back on, radiator support is on, we put on the radiator guard next. So this side of the radiator guard is now done with this 10mm bolt. What I'm going to do is do the same on the other side. Alright, here's where it's going to go. Perfect. So this is all done. By all definitions, the installation has now been concluded. What I'm going to do is just go over all the nuts and bolts, make sure everything is all tightened and nicely installed, no moving pieces. And after that, I'm going to take the bike outside there and just give it a bit of a go and show you guys what the exhaust sounds like. I also want to make sure I actually collect all the hardware pieces properly and store them for when it's time to maybe pass this bike on to the next person. And in Australia, for roadworthy, you'll need the stock exhaust, so I'm going to keep that. I'll need it when I am passing this bike on to the next person. Alright, so I've got the bike out. First start after the exhaust. Let's give it a go. So I'm going to put the before on the screen first. Here we go. And here is the after. I don't want to be a dickhead in the neighborhood, so I'm not going to give it too much a go. But if you do want to see, or hear, I should say, what it sounds like, I'm going to go out for a ride, record the whole ride with my 360 camera, and maybe put my thoughts on the exhaust in that video. So don't forget to subscribe if you want to see that. I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, please ride safe, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.